The smell of a mop bucket still does something to me. Pine oil and cold water, and the particular iron rust undertone that concrete floors in a mountain bunker pick up in winter. I catch it sometimes in maintenance corridors, in the back rooms of fire stations where men my age are finishing out their careers, and I have to stop walking for a moment. Not because it brings back something unpleasant, because it brings back something I did not fix fast enough, and the two feelings are not the same. Fob Relin, November 1983. A NATO acoustic listening post drilled into the granite of a mountain in the Fulda corridor's left shoulder, designed to hear what satellites couldn't see, the resonant signature of Soviet tube artillery registering rounds, the low-frequency knock of tracked vehicles at distance, the specific harmonic a hind makes at 4 kilometers that differs from a hip by 11 cycles per second, and a feeling in the back teeth. Relin was small, 14 operators on a given watch, 2 communication arrays, and an acoustic analysis section in the lower corridor that ran 24 hours because the Soviets liked to register guns at night when ambient noise softened. We were very good at what we did. We were very proud of that. I was the duty officer the morning she arrived, Captain Elliot Marsh, 31 years old, 7 months at Relin, certain I understood everything the post needed. She came through the outer security door at 0640 with a single duffel bag and a manila travel folder, and the orders she handed me were wet at the corner from the morning fog, and the typewriter ink had run on the rank line so that I could not read what she was. The name block was clear enough. The unit block said, NATO Base Support Services, assigned. I read that twice. I looked at her. She was perhaps 40, perhaps 45, in a civilian contractor's coat over what might have been an old field uniform blouse, and she was watching me read with the particular patience of someone who has handed documents to people like me before and learned not to rush them. Colonel Varden came through the inner door at that moment. Our post commander, a signals man who had been at Relin 4 years and ran it with the specific certainty of someone who has never been wrong yet. He glanced at the orders over my shoulder. He read, Base Support Services, and he reached past me to the duty cabinet, and he took out the mop. Not quickly, not with cruelty. That was the particular quality of it. He did it the way you hand someone the tool appropriate to the role they've presented, unhurried, matter of fact. 14 men at the duty stations watching from the operations room window. Storage and sanitation is down the left corridor, 3rd door. He said it pleasantly. She took the mop. She looked at him for 1 full second, then at me, and I looked at the duty log because I had no language ready and no courage behind it. I have thought about that second for 40 years. She went down the left corridor. Varden went back to the operations room. I stood at the duty desk with a sink feeling in my chest that I catalogued as mild discomfort and did not examine further because examining it would have required me to act, and acting would have required me to understand something I was not yet equipped to understand about what I had just watched a man do. At 1340 that day, the primary communication array at Relin went dark. It was not enemy action. It was a relay fault in the junction box at the antenna head, a thing that happened in mountain cold once every several years, and the repair timeline from our signals team was 2 hours minimum, more likely 3. The secondary array went dark 11 minutes later. A cascade fault, a shared power component we had been told was redundant and was not. Full blackout. No outbound, no inbound. The acoustic monitoring section could still hear the mountain, but there was no one outside the mountain to call. What the acoustic monitoring section was also hearing, by 1347, was a pattern. Sergeant Kellard was first to name it. He came to the duty desk with his headphones around his neck and a look on his face that I had not seen before, which was the look of a man who is hearing something his training told him was theoretically possible, but practically unlikely, and who is not entirely sure his training is good enough for what he is hearing. Sir, he said, there's a registration sequence on the eastern aspect. Low frequency, repeating interval. I'm getting 6 distinct source signatures, possibly 8. He paused. I can't place the caliber. Kellard was our best analyst. If Kellard couldn't place the caliber, the rest of us were not going to help him. I sent 2 operators down the corridor to the acoustic section to cross-reference against the signature library. I sent another to the relay junction to get me a revised repair estimate. I stood at the duty desk, doing the arithmetic that every officer in a position like mine does when the numbers start going wrong, which is, what do I have, what do I need, and how much time do I have to get from one to the other? What I did not do was go down the left corridor and open the third door. She opened it herself, at 13:51, and she came to the duty desk carrying a green notebook and the mop, which she leaned against the wall beside the cabinet with the specific economy of someone who intends to return to a job when the interruption is finished. She said, "I need to go to the surface." I told her the surface protocol during a possible registration sequence was restricted to essential operations personnel. She looked at me. There was nothing angry in it. There was also nothing that resembled the response of a person who has just been told a reasonable thing by a competent authority. It was the look of someone calculating how much time she has to spend on a conversation before the conversation costs more than she can afford. "I need to go to the surface," she said again. "I'll need 3 minutes of open air, and someone with a reliable watch." I don't know why I said yes. I have told myself it was intuition, the small version of professional judgment, something in her voice. The truth is that I was out of options I recognized as options, and she was standing there with a green notebook and certainty is a thing you follow when everything else goes uncertain. Corporal Bress took her up the access ladder. I watched the door. At 13:59, 8 minutes after she left the duty desk, her voice came down the access shaft as Brest relayed it on the internal line. 6 guns, 152mm, Soviet 2S3 Akatsiya, self-propelled, battery of 6 with a possible 7th, registering from a secondary position 2 degrees south. Eastern Ridge, estimated range 11 kilometers. She gave the grid in 2 parts. The battery position first, then the secondary. She gave the elevation offset. She gave the registration interval, 4 minutes 20 seconds between rounds, shortening, which meant the battery was walking rounds toward a final reference point and would have it within the next 3 cycles. Kellard, who had been standing behind me since 13:52, said nothing for approximately 4 seconds. Then he said, very quietly, "She's right on the caliber." We couldn't call out, but Relin had a landline, a physical copper line run through the mountain in 1971 that everyone had forgotten about, except the man who built the junction that kept it live, who had the particular stubbornness of old engineers about not decommissioning things that still work. I remembered it at 14:03. We used it at 14:06. The grid she called was relayed through a Belgian artillery liaison position to NATO's forward fire control element at 14:11, 40 seconds before the relay junction came back online and our arrays lit up again. The 2S3 battery displaced at 14:13. Whether it was because they'd completed registration or because the liaison net had moved against them, I cannot tell you. What I can tell you is that the forward NATO element operating in that grid corridor that morning sustained no artillery contact in the following 6 hours, when a battery in that position, with that registration, would have been walking rounds across a command and control node inside 40 minutes. She came back down the access ladder at 14:15 with her notebook, and she went down the left corridor and she returned to the third door. I stood at the duty desk for a long moment. I thought about going after her. I thought about what I would say. I did not have words yet that were equal to what had just happened. And there is a cowardice in professional life that disguises itself as patience. I will find the right moment, and I exercised it. Colonel Varden came to me at 16:20 with a message from the post commander's communications review, which had been triggered by the landline use because standing doctrine required accounting for any out-of-protocol transmission. He wanted to know the source of the acoustic data. I told him. He looked at me for a moment, in the specific way that men who are very certain look at information that does not belong in their framework. Then he went to find Post Commander Heisch. I was not present for what happened next. I know it from Heisch afterward, who told it to me the way people tell things they have needed to tell for a long time. Heisch pulled her sealed file. The contractor cover was a personnel security measure, not unusual for the period, for people whose technical profile warranted it. What was unusual was what the file contained. 14 years of acoustic analysis across 3 NATO theaters, a citation from the West German Bundeswehr Intelligence Directorate for work she could not be publicly credited for, and the authorship line for NATO Acoustic Detection Field Procedure 7, Revision 3, which was the document Relin's entire analysis section had been trained on since 1977. Kellert had passed his qualification board on her doctrine. The two operators I had sent to the library to cross-reference the signatures had pulled a manual she had written. Varden had been posting the daily acoustic analysis schedule according to a rotation she had designed 6 years before the day he handed her the mop. Her call sign was Pale Locust. It was given to her by a French liaison colonel in 1971, she told Heisch, for the way she went still before she named a position, the specific quality of a thing that has heard everything it needs to hear. Varden came to the duty desk at 1842. He did not say anything for a moment. There were 7 men in the operations room and 4 at the adjacent stations, and I was the only other person at the desk, which was the same desk where he had handed her the mop, and I think he understood that, because he looked at it before he looked at me. Then he went down the left corridor. He knocked at the 3rd door. She opened it. I heard him ask her to come to the duty desk. I heard her say she had nearly finished the lower corridor. I heard him say please, and the please was the whole story, because Varden did not say please to people he outranked. And in that moment, in the math of what she was and what he was, the question of outranking had been settled by 6 guns on an eastern ridge. She came to the duty desk. The mop was in her left hand. He stood in front of her, and the 14 men who happened to be in or near the operations room were watching, because people always know when something real is about to happen, and Varden lowered himself to one knee on the concrete floor of FOB Relin, November 1983, and he held the position for what I counted as 7 seconds before he rose. She said, "I'll finish the corridor." She turned and went back down the hall. I have run the post-duty desk in this story, and I want to be honest about my part in it. I handed her nothing. I did not give her the mop, but I stood at the desk and watched the man who did, and I said nothing, and then I stood at the desk while she called 6 guns from the surface by ear, and I almost didn't send her up. The things I failed to do in that day form a kind of list that I have kept, not written down, but kept, because lists that aren't written down are harder to lose. What I do now, when a smudged set of orders comes through the duty desk, is read the smudged line first, not the name block, not the unit block. The rank line, the thing I cannot read, is the line I start with, because Pale Locust taught me that the thing obscured is often the thing that matters most, and the only honest response to not being able to read it is to put it on the desk and ask. I should have asked in 1983. The corridor got cleaned either way, and 6 guns fell silent, and Varden's knee on that concrete floor settled the question of what we owed her. But asking takes about 4 seconds. I have thought about those 4 seconds, and what they might have returned, for a long time.